God, might need a guard. Every loss, taken to heart. Me first, that cannot be. Must be these underdog episodes, see? Feeling much better, so suddenly, under the Monica G. Crafted at night while all of them sleep. I won't look a fool, taking this tool, defeating the opposition around me. No, I'm not sorry. Yes, I'm taking this knowledge and pride. Just barking no harm, don't be startled. Yes, I'm taking the title, and it's so vital. Thanks for the ride, I'll never be idle. Turn up the dial, it's about to get wild, and the points gon' pile up.
Dynasty underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now. Dynasty underdog bite down, up at the day and the night. Now, easy as flying a kite. Now, come take a look at it right now.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 151 of Dynasty Underdog. I'm your host, Uriah Dawkins, and with me tonight, Billy Beeman. What's up, man?
I'm here, and I'm not lagging. The stream's all caught up. So I'm stoked, man. I'm always getting hyped, listening to myself on the intro, man. I'm ready for a good episode tonight. It's going to be fun.
Intro's so good. I love it, too. You nailed it. Yeah, we have to have another remix someday.
Yeah, seriously. It's due for a remix, man. That thing's probably... 2 years old now? Like the remix of the original, which is almost 3 or 4 years old now. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's gotta be pretty close. Yeah.
Yeah,
cool. Well, let's just hop into some news and nonsense then. This one's fun to announce just because it's a big deal. If you're on fantasy Twitter at all, you're probably well aware of a contest called Scott Fish Bowl. Contest for charity, raises money for Toys for Tots. Does a great job. They raise a ton of money for kids. Rocking last year.
Let's go.
Year before, actually.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones, by the way. That's one of my favorite ones.
That's like pretty much all I wear out and about.
Yeah,
like,
I get it.
My kid's like, how many Scott Fish Bowl shirts do you have? I'm like, oh.
I certainly have more Scott Fish Bowl shirts than I have of any other article of clothing, like brand-wise. Like, definitely most, by far.
I have 2 Cowboys jerseys and like 4 Scott Fish Bowl shirts.
All right, that ratio needs to change, clearly.
I know.
There. And I think it's the same for me with the Patriots, by the way.
Yeah. I'm always worried about buying jerseys, but yeah. So we as a pod will be sponsoring the Podathon. This will be our 4th year in a row, and just happy to do it. So tune into that when it comes up. The Podathon is awesome. Just a bunch of fantasy guys talking about charity and stuff, talking about life experiences, their experiences in Scott Fish Bowl. A lot of these people didn't really have a following or a community with something they wanted to promote, content creators and stuff like that, and is able for people to reach out to the fantasy community, which is mostly really nice and friendly, and it's just a good way for people to connect. So check that out.
Absolutely. And just there's so many people who are involved with the back end ongoings of Scott Fish Bowl that make it happen, make the Podathon happen, get all the money, collect everything, that whole 9 yards. But I do want to give a special shout out to Dave Wright at FF Spaceman on Twitter. He does a ton with the organization in terms of the guest list, getting all of the sponsors, getting everything together. I know it's just it's a lot of work. I know it is, but he does a great job, and he does it willingly, and he loves doing it. So just big shout out to him. He's my guy. He's I always connect with him every year when Scott Fish Bowl comes around to make sure that we get involved and can do anything we can to help out. And yeah, so stoked to be sponsor once again.
Awesome. All right, some more Patriots news. It seems like I try to find something every week, and you're just like, I don't want to talk about it. But hey, man, super smart Patriots.
It's ridiculous.
They go ahead and give Devontae Parker, the magical 5th-year breakout, a 3-year deal. I just got to ask why.
Yeah, I mean, again, we shouldn't really care too much about in the money. It's not really our business, and it doesn't matter for our purposes. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it really makes me think that DeAndre Hopkins is probably not an option for them anymore. Maybe they got word that he's looking elsewhere, is going to wait a while, and they want to secure that room. I mean, it was his last year there for Parker, but yeah, I mean, I don't love it. He's been fine. He doesn't get any separation. He's really more of a contested catch guy. And I guess there's a place for that, but yeah, I mean, they certainly invested a good amount of money in him. Belichick loves him probably more than he should. And he's done this with a good deal of players later in his career where he's probably kept them around, given them a deal that they probably don't deserve, but no other team really would. There's really wasn't, that market for them. So So yeah, it's just a curious kind of decision. I don't love it for fantasy. I mean, he's there and he's, he might be a good like flex fill in here and there, but we're talking about wide receivers at that range is virtually useless to me.
Yeah. It's just not. I was listening to like Evan Silva, Adam Levitan, the establish the run thing, and they're talking about trying to invest a little bit in the Patriots offense. As ugly as it sounds, it's so cheap. But I think it's more. I don't think for dynasty purposes any of us really want to jump in those waters. But if you're doing like best ball or redraft, you could get a piece of that offense for cost you nothing. But yeah, Devontae Parker, don't care. Glad you got it. Glad you got another deal though.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm investing in that offense, I'm definitely going more on like the Gesicki side of things. And that he kind of sets himself apart in terms of the passing game from Hunter Henry. I mean, but I just don't think Devontae Parker is going to give you enough consistency regularly. He's going to be like a big play guy and probably not even a big play fantasy type. More like he'll be like a 30-yard reception here and there in a game, and maybe a couple more and have 50 yards and 2 or 3 catches. It's like, yeah, it's not gonna cut it.
3 for 30 and a touchdown 3 times a year. Yeah.
Right. I mean, again, like go invest in Tyquan Thornton, go invest in Pierre Strong. Like there's a lot of other cheap options that you don't need to worry about Devontae Parker. So yeah, we can stop talking about him.
What happened to Jacoby Myers?
Where'd
he go?
He's in
Vegas.
With,
okay. Yeah,
with Adams.
I know he got a deal, which I was pretty happy for. So, all right.
Yeah, I think that's a good spot for him.
Yeah. This next one, there's a video clip of kind of a behind the scenes with Miles Sanders and the coaching staff there in Carolina. And they were talking about Miles Sanders wants to catch the ball more. And they were aware that he once upon a time had a 50 catch season. Do you buy it? This is Frank Reich, right? So I saw somebody had pointed out that Frank Reich's RB2s rarely or if ever have surpassed 20% of rushing opportunity. So if
RB2s, his RB2s,
exactly.
Gotcha.
Whoever the backup is, assuming Miles Sanders is the guy there, which he probably is, if he could get 75% of the workload there, like that is kind of enticing. I'm not even a Miles Sanders guy, but like just the opportunity there's kind of nice. And if he is going to catch more balls, wheels up. But it's really hard to like see this happening just based off of a little interview they had on YouTube.
Yeah, and I will say this. This is why doing stuff like your own rankings and projections and stuff like that can be very helpful. Like doing the film analysis, like everybody's like, you can go and just look at somebody else's work. But for me, like doing the actual work is a big part of it, and seeing like how each piece falls into place for the projections is a big part of it, right? When you're basically like manually like deciding, the percentage of the rush opportunities they're going to get and so on and so forth, you actually get to look at the team and say, like, realistically, how much can this person actually get, right? And I got to Carolina in doing the projections, and maybe probably overestimating potentially the yards per reception and the yards per attempt on the rushes. But you go by career averages, you try to do something that is, something more stable that you can look back to historically. He, I think on average, like 5 yards a carry and 6 yards a reception. Right. So like, I just went with that baseline, and his numbers are just ridiculous. I gave him like a 10% target share, which isn't that much. Right. Which gives him 54 targets, 38 receptions, 227 yards, 2 touchdowns. And then I gave him 60% of the rushing attempt share because like they don't have anybody. Like, and I even gave 25%. And like you said, Frank Reich doesn't do this, but I just had no other way to like split it to make it make sense in my head, where like I'm not giving Miles Sanders like 350 touches, you know what I mean? Or 350 carries. So giving him just 60% of the rushing attempts, it's 294 attempts for, 1,400 yards essentially and 8 touchdowns, which is a pretty stellar season. Now, I think probably got to come back on the yards per carry and the yards per reception, just having a rookie quarterback, just a new offense, you know what I mean? The whole 9 yards. So those numbers may come down a bit, but the sheer volume, I just don't see how it's not there. And I'm not you know me, I'm not a Miles Sanders guy, but I don't see how he's not getting immense volume. So yeah,
I like that.
I mean, 54 targets
trade.
is pretty good, right?
Yeah. I made that trade in Console Wars where I moved from the 104 spot down to 106, and I picked up Montgomery. Well, I had offers out to 2 other league mates for Miles Sanders, and I kind of wanted him a little more than money, so but
just right. As you should.
Yeah.
As you should, for sure.
So this one comes from Jordan Rodriguez. She writes for The Athletic, and she did a pod or whatever, and somebody pulled the quote from her, and she was saying, hey, this is Cam Akers. Oh, yeah, so she writes for the Rams. I should probably say that. But she said, this is Cam Akers' job to lose. The Rams want him to be their lead back. They need him to be their lead back. Look, it's really hard to buy into Cam Akers when I've been out on him since he was drafted. But again, there's not really anybody else there. Sonny Michel they just added, but like, I'm not worried about Sonny Michel. Maybe I should be, but I'm just not. Like, is this the year to invest in Cam Akers?
There's also Kyron Williams and Zach Evans there. So there's definitely opportunity, I think, for other guys to kind of carve out some work. But another year removed from the Achilles injury, you hope so. But I think that it could take longer than that to really get right for these guys. You see Foreman, it took him years to get Donta Foreman. It took him years to really get right. So even so, I'm not a big believer in Cam Akers post injury and his explosiveness. So I think that he's going to get a lot of work. They're going to try to work him a good bit, but the team's not going to be their offensive line's not what it used to be when they had a really good rushing attack. It's just not. It's not what it used to be when they went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, and they're going to have Matthew Stafford back. So it's going to be a better team than it was last year, no doubt. I just don't know how efficient of a runner. He's never been an efficient runner. So I don't think he's going to all of a sudden just become an efficient runner with this offense. So yeah, I mean, I think he's going to be an inefficient fantasy option, and he's probably going to do a lot of what we've seen him do in the past, in my opinion. I mean, this isn't news to me. Like, they've wanted him to be their lead back. They've needed him to be their lead back. And most of the time when they've given him the opportunity to be the lead back post-injury, he's been fairly disappointing on a per-touch basis.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Just not very efficient at all. Yeah, I know he finished the end of season with some pretty good games, but he was getting massive volume, right? So, yeah. I hope good things for him, but it's really hard to buy into it. I have one. I want to
go and keep talking. Sorry, I want to go on Keep Trade Cut real quick and see like where his.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, what's it even worth to you right now, or what does it cost to get him? But yeah, I do have the 1K maker share in one of the startups with I think Dan Morrison, and I had planned on trying to flip him, but like nobody wants him. So hopefully he comes out the gate just grease lightning, and I could get rid of him. But yeah, we'll see.
Give me 1 second here. I'm trying to find Cam Akers. How far is Cam Akers down there? Let's see. Okay, so he's going as running back 22 right now.
Okay.
So let me see what that puts him. Doesn't allow me to like. Okay, so that's like. What am I missing here with this? I don't really care. I'm going to take as long as I need to for this. Okay, so he's going right before DeAndre Swift. He's going before Devin A-Chain, right after Alexander Madison, after Amari Cooper, after Miles Sanders, right after Deontay Johnson. I mean, I guess that's like okay value for him, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to ask where he was in relation to Miles Sanders, but just right behind him, huh?
He's running back 22 to running back 20, Miles Sanders. So just a couple. I mean, I would much rather Miles Sanders personally. Just, I mean, he is 2 years older, Miles Sanders, but like just the situation is so much better. And if you don't really believe in Akers post injury, then the age isn't really as big of a concern. I don't think so. Cool. I'd almost rather DeAndre Swift, to be honest with you. Like, I know Cam Akers is going to get a lot more work, but I think Swift has a little more upside, probably cheaper. I don't know. Yeah, that's a tough one. That's a really tough one.
Wonder if there's an option to
like,
move off of Akers to grab Sanders.
I think there definitely is. I think some people probably have him over Sanders, especially with the age and everything. So that might be something to look at.
I'm gonna try that. All right, this next one really got my heart all Twitter-pated when I saw you had something here about Sky Moore, because I still love the guy. You said here, per Reed, one of the Sky Moore is one of the most targeted receivers in minicamp, close to the most catches, taking a good jump, and quarterback trusts him, but there's still room to climb. And here you have curated a sheet that has the players with at least one top 24 season for players with the same year one yards and target share. And I didn't want to look at it because I just don't want to believe it. But
I posted
what stands
it
out
up
to
on
you?
the video here. Yeah, no, I posted up on the video here. It might be kind of small, but nonetheless, it's there if you want to look at it real quick while I talk about it. But no, I just thought the list, like, and obviously you can, people do this in a ton of different ways where they kind of filter down based on, like his year one yards were like 250 yards on the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And his target share was like 5.6 or something like really low. So, I was just doing those two things because, like, going by his receptions, like 20 or 30 receptions, like, I don't know, it didn't seem really fitting. So I was trying to do something a little bit more meaningful, and so this, and again, like, I think these comps and stuff aren't always that meaningful, but it's good to look at just kind of historically. What I did here is I just, like Uriah said, I just pulled players with 250 yards receiving or less, and I think I did 6% target share or less in their first season, who went on to have at least one top 24 season in their career, fantasy wise, right? And so the list is not great, right? I mean, the top of the list is like Steve Smith, and that's Carolina. Steve Smith, like the absolute stud, who went on to have 9 top 24 seasons. But after that, I mean, it's few and far between. You have a Vincent Jackson, definitely a different type of player, right? Steve Johnson's in there. Stevie Johnson. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else, but it's, Eric Decker, Terrell Pryors, Juwan Johnson, Tyrell Williams, Nate Washington, Jericho Cotchery. I mean, throw me back. Wow.
I know. I'm looking at this list and I'm like, wow.
Right.
Take me
Brandon
back to when
Lloyd,
it all started,
Santana Moss, a couple New York Jets. Yeah, exactly. Take us back to when it started. So not that this is the end all be all. I'm not saying that because these players, were this successful and no other players were this successful who had that same kind of path. Doesn't mean he won't, but I just think looking at it, like he's going to need to be a target hog, I think, in KC, pretty much the slot receiver and the number 2-3 option at all times for him to really return, I think, the kind of value you're looking for. So I want to believe in Sky Moore. I'm a big fan of Sky Moore. Both me and Uriah were big fans of Sky Moore coming out. I just think that it's a tough climb no matter what the coaches say. So I'm a little skeptical.
When I look at the sheet, all I'm thinking is, all right, cool. Yeah, Sky Moore is going to be Steve Smith. And I'll just move on from there and let that be my reality for now.
I mean, it's not the worst comp for him. Like they, in stature and play style, like
size and all that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Steve Smith had that dog in him that, that it factor that's kind of
real dog,
impossible to really, tangibly like translate. And it's just like nobody else has that. So he would really have to just take it to a whole another level. But, not many players have that in them like Steve did. So I wouldn't expect it.
Yeah. The chances are Sky Moore is not going to be a big deal ever, but I'm still hoping. So cool. What do you have here on Gibbs?
Okay, so this is just it's hype season. We're talking about Andy Reid hyping up Sky Moore, and there's all sorts of camp news and all sorts of different things that are coming out about players. And I saw this one on Twitter the other day, and it was from the Sleeper NFL account, what's so funny, Sleeper, how they post all those little blurbs and stuff. There was nowhere on Twitter that Sleeper was posting the blurbs. And I'd always been thinking like they should have an account for this, and they finally created it. And this is it. And it's a great account because it's helpful for the stuff that I did here. But what they did is they posted a video of Jahmyr Gibbs saying he's not overly they posted a tweet saying an NFC scouting director on Jahmyr Gibbs, quote, He's not overly powerful, but should complement David Montgomery very well in that backfield. And I was like, interesting. Let me go read this report, right? So I went and I actually read the report, and I go and find the full quote. And it doesn't articulate the same perception, I think, the same idea that the sleeper tweet gave off, right? So the full quote is, quote, "He's fast, elusive, instinctive, and can break off a big run at any time." An NFC scout director told Heavy, "He's not overly powerful, but should complement David Montgomery very well in that backfield." So the complement David Montgomery very well in that backfield was secondary to this dude is a home run waiting to happen at any time, So it's just, you got to be careful with these tweets. They're obviously it's engagement farming. They're trying to get clicks. Go and read the actual quote if you're ever worried, because at least 50% of the time, probably more than that, there's going to be more context to the quote that I think gives you a better idea of what's actually being said, what's going on, and kind of if there's anything actionable from it. And this to me is like, yeah, obviously he's going to compliment David Montgomery's, run up the middle 15 times a game or 10 times a game or whatever. Anyway, just go read the full stories. Don't believe every little headline you see. And this is a perfect example of it.
I mean, that's a life lesson when you're out there reading news or whatever it happens to be. It's the same thing. Those headlines are always trash. But they get you to click, and that's the thing, right?
Yep. Well, I read it. I was like, I don't know. Let me go see this. What do you mean? I like David Montgomery too, but they don't like him as much as I do. I don't think so. Yeah, it was a good one to go check out and highlight for the people. So cool. Okay, real quick before we hop into some dynasty trades, we're moving along pretty fast here. I wanted to bring up something that I actually I think I broached the idea with John Hogue on the Superflex Super Show a couple of weeks ago when I recorded with him, talking a little bit about, because he's the QB extreme guy. QBX is his strategy that he came up with, which is essentially prioritizing quarterbacks through the third, fourth, fifth quarterback, foregoing positional values, because as soon as that draft's over, the quarterbacks will immediately gain so much value that you can then go and get really anything you want, need, and probably get plus value on top of it. That's at least the idea. And it is definitely a solid strategy if you can execute it properly. And especially if you can get, 4 top quarterbacks that you're not like ever going to be worried about falling off the face of the earth. That is, I think, the most viable strategy. He is a little bit more flexible with it, I think, a little more loose with it, where he's willing to go for, I think closer to the bottom third of the quarterbacks in the league, which I think is a little bit of a dangerous game to play. Uriah and I have found that out ourselves in practice. So what I said to him on the Superflex show is, I've been building a lot of teams where I don't prioritize a third quarterback, like almost at all. Now, if I can get one at a good value towards like the double-digit rounds, a couple of those guys fall, Jimmy G, whatever. If those guys fall, sure, I'd love to go ahead and get, my third quarterback in that form, that way. But I don't like reaching for a third quarterback because, there's just not much positional advantage to the bottom third quarterbacks in the league. They aren't really they almost won't ever score the same points that your QB2 will score, right? They likely won't score as many points as a running back or a wide receiver you could throw into that super flex spot would score for the most part, right? Obviously, there's certain guys who pop off. There's certain guys who, break out, obviously, that we weren't expecting. But by and large, there's just not much advantage to having a third quarterback on your team that's not somewhere in the top 15 to 20 quarterbacks, right? Because they're just not giving you any value over replacement, first of all, within the position. But even outside of that, they're not really giving you an advantage compared to other positions as well, at least based on what I've seen. Then you go and add into, this was something that was brought up, and I totally give JJ Zacharyson all the credit on this. He brought up like an extra part of this, which was that the bottom third of the league turns over almost every year from the quarterback position, right? It changes. Like you're going to get rookies who come in, guys who fade out, Carson Wentz's, like all, there's countless examples of this. So I pulled up, because I'm on a vorp kick over the last couple of weeks. Why not, right? Had some data to play with. So I averaged out the running back and wide receivers vorp, average vorp on a per game basis. And then I took quarterback and did the same thing I did with them the last couple of weeks if you've been with us. And I did their average vorp within the top 8, top 12, and then the 13 through 36, right? Just to look at like the value over replacement within the position of quarterbacks, and then kind of look at it compared to running backs and wide receivers. And if you're with us on YouTube, you can see like pretty significant difference here. Just within the position though, quarterback at the, within the top 8, it's a pretty flat position in terms of scoring, right? Like you're not getting a ton of advantage even at the top. At the top, you're getting 8.5 points advantage in terms of value over replacement for the quarterback position. When you look at the running back, wide receiver on average, it's 13.9, which is a pretty stark difference, right? You go into the top 12, it's 7.1 for the quarterback, and then you go 13 to 36 for the quarterback, and it's 0.38. 0.38. Like it flattens to ungodly levels. Like you don't want to touch that. But these are the players that you're prioritizing as your third quarterback, right? Like somewhere in that 13 to 36 range, that's where you're getting your third quarterback most likely, right? Obviously the back end, but one way or another, it's super flat within even the 13 to 36, right outside the top 12. Even your quarterback twos are super flat. So you're not getting a super big advantage in general. But what I was looking at was like, in terms of positionally, like, should I just not really worry about the quarterback 3 and just throw in a wide receiver or a running back if I prioritize running back and wide receiver throughout the draft? So I think that just in terms of points on the face of it, I don't think you're getting a huge advantage from the quarterback position. Obviously, there is dynasty value that you have to take into account in terms of these quarterbacks. But for me, talking about, how the bottom third of the league turns over a lot, it just doesn't make sense for me to prioritize that position, because if my quarterback 2 goes down, I don't really think that quarterback 3 that I drafted is going to save me. And it kind of shows that in terms of the value over replacement within the position, at least.
Okay. I get what you're saying. I can't get out of a draft without 3, at least. And so I was looking at our league, Dynasty Underdog Listener League 2, which I won last year because I'm just so good at this. But I had drafted. I had Dak Prescott, Aaron Rodgers, Tannehill, Jameis Winston, Trevor Lawrence. I lost.
You did the QBX strategy, by the way.
They were just there.
You did.
Yeah. Nobody wanted Aaron Rodgers. Nobody wanted Tannehill. Trevor Lawrence fell quite a bit too. And he had a really good year. But I lost. I ended up trading him for Tua. But Rodgers had a down year. Dak missed a ton of time, and I was still able to keep my Superflex spot filled with the quarterback. And I'm looking at like who I could have replaced him with. I would have been able to start, instead of in my Superflex, I could have started like Adam Thielen, or I could have started Romeo Doubs, Chase Claypool. I don't think, at least in this league or the specific year, that if I didn't have those extra quarterbacks during the time Dak was out, etc., that I would have been able to do that. So, at least looking at season-long points, that any of the wide receivers or running backs I had that would have replaced that Superflex spot, we're talking about almost 100-point difference by the end of the year. 80 at the minimum. So I was just wondering, I know data doesn't lie, but I'm like, I lived it.
You're the data guy. What do you mean?
I know.
No. So you make some fairly, you make some reasonable points. Don't get me wrong.
I think it has to do with the caliber of quarterbacks I had. Obviously, like Jameis Winston didn't do anything for me, but I had good, solid quarterbacks. They weren't. None of those quarterbacks finished outside the top 20. Right? They all finished within the top 20 easy. And so I think that's kind of where you're going there. Like, was it a Mac Jones? That might have been a whole lot different. Maybe I would rather have Adam Thielen there instead of Mac Jones. But
Okay.
I just feel like drafting quarterback heavy did help me with that particular league last year.
Yes, and again, executed properly, the QBX strategy will work for you every time if you execute it properly. And in that case, you had 4 or 5 quarterbacks who were hands down starters. Like there wasn't even a question about it. I think the only one you mentioned there out of the 5 was Jameis Winston, who
should have started. Damn it.
Should have, but the injury and everything happened. No, but again, you executed properly there, where you had so much value in the quarterback position that when one went down, you had one who had the value above replacement to go into that spot. Also, I know what you did in this league. You ended up trading one down the road, which is part of the QBX strategy too. I think you got one back. I think you got one back. I could be wrong, but I think you got one back.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, ridiculous. You got Tua back and something on top of it. So, that was flawless execution. But I think what you're discounting in terms of what you would have to replace them otherwise is that if you didn't go after all those quarterbacks in the draft, what players would you have had? What running backs and wide receivers would you have prioritized over them? Now, again, the quarterbacks you chose were damn good quarterbacks, so why would you choose wide receivers, running backs over them? I'm certainly not talking about that situation. If they fall to you, by all means, take as many quarterbacks as you can. As many solidified starting quarterbacks as you can. That is definitely the caveat. I talked about this with John Hogan. He was like, what would you do differently about the QBX strategy, which is something I guess he had on Tommy Blair, who's really smart kid, doesn't have a following guy. I don't know why I say kid, but really smart dude. Doesn't really have a following, but should. Is probably going to gain one because he was on there again. But his whole thing was like, let me get as many top 8 quarterbacks as I can on my team. Let me get 4 or 5 of them. I don't care about running back, wide receiver, because I'll just trade them for, I'll just make it up some other way. I'll trade, but I'm going to have all the position. I'm going to have all the value in the Superflex league. And I think that's the way to do it is, yes, go after all the stable quarterbacks because you're not going to hurt yourself that way. Uriah and I did it where we took 5, 6 quarterbacks, but they weren't really stable assets. And then we had a really hard time getting rid of them. We ended up doing really well getting rid of them. It just took a lot of patience, which I don't think everybody has. So I'm just looking at a league that I drafted a couple months ago where I essentially went Tua as my QB1, and I made a little trade to get up there from the 4th round, and I went Kirk Cousins as my QB2, and I didn't draft another quarterback in that league at all. After those quarterbacks, I'm not going to mention the ones before that. Well, I guess I can, but just my picks before that are Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, Tyreek Hill, Deebo Samuel. Then after the quarterbacks that I picked, I forego all quarterbacks to go Calvin Ridley, J.K. Dobbins, Calvin Ridley, Pat Freiermuth. Sorry, I made some trades here. David Montgomery, David Njoku, right over. Let me see what quarterbacks were here. Guys like Will Levis, and it would have been Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Desmond Ridder, those kind of quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying is like they're prioritizing going for these quarterbacks at the bottom half where you can see that their value over replacement is negligible at best. Why wouldn't I prioritize the other positions that I know are going to last longer? And I can go get a QB likely another way. You know what I mean? So I think it definitely is dependent on how the draft falls, right? If your league is not if your league's not prioritizing the quarterbacks in the 12 to 15 range, you probably should be prioritizing those guys. If you actually go and dig into the data, it's like a massive fall off after, I think it was Derek Carr last year. I forgot what it was. It was like quarterback 17 or something. I forgot exactly where it was, but it's like the value, it just goes almost to zero instantly. It's like gone. So if you can get up in there, obviously you're going to have a significant advantage over your league mates, and you're going to make it so that some people are playing more of a 1 QB league than a Superflex league because you're taking all that value. So, but if you don't execute it properly, you're going to miss on the right quarterbacks. You're not going to have the QBX strategy really. Most people aren't going to buy into that BS. And so it just depends. Like a lot of the drafts that I've been doing, I'm at the back end. So the quarterbacks I'm getting probably aren't going to be the best. And so that kind of dictates my strategy of saying, let me forego the 3rd quarterback because it's not going to make sense for this team. So I just think that in Superflex, we are hardwired to just believe that, quarterback, no matter what, always value is best. And from a dynasty perspective, it definitely matters. Like Desmond Ridder, if he does well, his dynasty value shoots up more than some running backs and wide receivers. So that obviously goes into the calculation. I'm not just saying look at points and that's it. But I'm saying from a perspective of points, I don't think you need to prioritize QB3 and forego all dynasty value and just go for like, I need to get this quarterback. Even if he's Ryan Tannehill, got to get my third quarterback. No matter, you don't need to do that. Yeah,
I like that.
All right.
Yeah, it's a good discussion. Yeah.
No, I like you pushing back on me, by the way. Like it.
Well, I had to. I'm sitting there. I'm like, I can't question the data acquisition. He's very good at this. So I was like, damn, it just doesn't make sense based off what I've seen. But realizing the QBs that actually selected in that league were pretty good. So
yeah, we've been talking a lot about like value over replacement and a lot of these different things, but there is a marrying of production versus value. And like, this is just looking at it, to me, it's more looking at it from a production perspective and kind of saying like, where do I need to make the cutoff in terms of like prioritizing dynasty value versus prioritizing production within, positions and kind of looking at that thing. So it's just a way to kind of like look at your team and prioritize certain things. Just I guess it's more like breaking a bad habit of just believing something because it's said all the time. Like I don't think, Superflex makes you feel like quarterbacks no matter what, but I think there's a little more nuance to it than that is all. That's what it is.
I love that. It's just like if you started a job anywhere, especially like in industry, and you see the way that the old timers are doing things, and if you question it, this is the way we've always done it. And when deep down, okay, well, there are other ways. This doesn't have to be the way. Just because it works, kind of. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I like it.
It's funny, along those same lines, I've been thinking about the running back age cliff a lot.
Yeah.
Because we have a good deal of running backs who are still pretty good, we think at least, who are entering that 26, 27-year-old season, and people don't want to let go. And I've been thinking like a lot of the research on value of replacement, a lot of the research on running back age cliff is like not necessarily up to date. Like some people may have it, but I don't see like widely distributed, like up to date information. Like here's like, where we are now in terms of running back age cliff based on the new data, the new seasons, whatever. And I've been kind of interested in pulling that too and seeing like, are they falling off at the same rate at 27 or are they maintaining a little bit longer just, as technology and health in sports gets better? I don't know. Just something I've been thinking about because I don't think we always like, and the reason I said this is, you're saying like the old heads have a certain way of doing it. And I think we just take what we hear and forget that the data could be, or the research could be like 5 years old and like things may have changed a little bit, which is what I think personally, that's what I think I found slightly with the VORP in terms of the wide receiver running back discussion we had a couple of weeks ago. Like it's not the same as it was, 4 or 5 years ago. It's just different. So
cool.
Sorry. Thanks for joining my TED Talk.
No, that's really good. I like that a lot. It's fun. I mean, you get the data and it's just like, especially like, from me when it hits and it kind of just like proves my priors a little wrong. So I enjoy that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Absolutely. So let's hop into some trades and non-trades.
Cool. Cool. Yeah.
That's okay.
No, yeah. You're actually doing much better than I was last week, so don't worry about it.
Cool.
Is this Bryce Young one yours?
Yeah, the first one's mine, so I'll just talk about it. I got an offer for my Dak Prescott and Stephon Diggs for Bryce Young and Christian Watson. Now, I didn't accept it because I don't need Bryce Young and I don't like Christian Watson. I have Dak and Diggs and I have a plan. So simply, I just rejected it. I didn't look at value or any of that stuff to think about too much. What I did think about, though, was if I was going for it, trying to compete, and I had Bryce Young and Christian Watson, this is the type of deal I would try to send out to somebody. Try my best to get Diggs and Dak. Like I respect where this person was coming from. I think it's a good move if you could do that. If you could get somebody to send you Dak and Diggs for your Bryce Young and Christian Watson, maybe something plus on top of it, I think that's a smart move. It just didn't make sense for my team. So I kept Dak and Diggs.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the Dak and Diggs side is the way to go. I think people are much too high on Christian Watson. I mean, if you talk to a Packers fan, they think he's the next Randy Moss. So, yeah, by all means, especially if you're contending, go ahead and sell Christian Watson for Diggs. I mean, I'm sure you can get something like that done without giving too much up. So, yeah, this is, again, I think I respect the hustle just like you do, something that I would do if I had those assets and was trying to continue to compete and go get some vet assets that I know what they are and not go for, the box. Keep the boat.
Yeah.
Okay,
All
cool.
right.
So I have a bunch of nonsense here.
Cool.
So I don't even know if any of these are, I don't think I made a single trade, but a bunch of stuff I wanted to talk about. So along those lines of like the running back age cliff and all that stuff, right? Nick Chubb versus Stephon Diggs. Just thoughts on like how close that is and like how much longevity each has in the league still, right? Because Stephon Diggs 29 going on 30 and Nick Chubb 27. I don't know if he's going on 28, but he's 27 for sure. So like, do you think that there's a massive, I mean, in terms of startups, like they're going probably a couple rounds apart, but if you had Stephon Diggs and somebody sent you Nick Chubb straight up, just say in a vacuum, forget your team makeup, how would you feel about that?
I think it's probably fair if I needed a running back. I think I'd probably just stick with, man, it's hard. Two things. Like I think that their longevity in the league is probably pretty close. Like they're probably both got like 2 good years left. I mean, realistically, right? Chubb maybe a little less. Diggs. I mean, I don't see Diggs playing until he's 35. Would I try to trade one of these guys straight up? It would depend on what I need in my team. But I feel like they should be going nearly back to back in startups.
Yeah, Chubb is going, I think, 2 rounds behind Stephon Diggs, or at least around that. So
that seems steep.
Yeah, there may be some opportunity to go grab. Well, I mean, Chubb's getting so much hype. Maybe there's not. I don't know. But in this specific deal, maybe there is some opportunity to go get Chubb plus for Diggs, which would be pretty incredible, I think. But yeah, I do think it's an interesting conversation. Again, talking about, like, since we've been talking about the value over replacement so much lately, I have it in my head that, like, if Chubb's going to be a top 8 back, which is most likely given his situation, he's going to be more valuable than Stephon Diggs in terms of point scoring for you this season. In terms of not yet. In terms of point scoring this season. So yeah, if you need a running back and like you're good at receiver, it's probably a solid deal. Like if you're trying to secure a title, Nick Chubb might do that this year for you. I saw this on Twitter and like I kind of agreed initially, like, yeah, this offer is crazy for Stephon Diggs, but I mean, despite the startup value, which I think is probably the market's probably wrong, I think it's probably a closer trade than people want to admit, to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
especially in Dynasty, right? I mean, what we're looking at is you have 2 usable assets for your team. One's a running back, one's a wide receiver. But I think they're going to be serviceable for your team for about the same amount of time. Like,
no, I think you're
right. I don't see
Diggs
playing for a whole bunch more than Chubb does.
I think that you can probably lock in an extra year from Diggs.
Sure.
Simply because just factoring in like injury and wear and tear on the running back position, like Nick Chubb taking 3, like he's going to take 200 plus carries over the next 2 seasons if he's there.
For sure,
easily,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And I'm being generous, probably 250 plus.
It's what he does.
Yeah, it's what he does. So that is insane. We're talking about like Zeke level type stuff, like where he's just going to be a shell of himself in a couple of years. So that is going to happen. If you're okay with that kind of dying on your roster and you don't need Stephon Diggs, then yeah, 100%, man. Like it makes some sense. But again, I think given the startup value right now, you should try getting Chubb plus for Stephon Diggs. Like, he's literally a 2-round value, right? It makes no sense. Like, you may as well try to get a second on top or something, right? Like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't mind that at all.
All right. Anyway, okay. This one was one I noted a couple weeks ago, and I was listening to the fantasy footballers, who are great, obviously, but I do think that their dynasty opinions miss the mark sometimes because they're so redraft focused. I honestly don't think that they have a super what's the word I'm looking for, but a super clear idea of the overall like market perception of like what picks are worth and whatnot. And they were saying in a Superflex league that Russell Wilson wasn't worth a first. And like, would you trade your mid first for Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
Like a mid 24 first right now, would you trade that for Russell Wilson?
Yeah.
What if was? Yeah. No, go ahead. I mean, what if you can guarantee your pick was a 1.05 next year? Would you trade that for Russell Wilson?
Yeah. I mean, unless I was like total, like
me too.
Yeah, unless I was like just total rebuild mode where I don't want an aging quarterback, but like this is Russell Wilson. I know that like the taste is sour because he had a really, really bad year last year. He was all plumpy and just the shell of himself, but I just have to believe he's going to turn it around. And you're 24 mid first, say it's Jordan Addison or something like that. Like, we don't know. We know who Russell Wilson is. Last year is not who Russell Wilson is, and he has Sean Payton as a coach. And I always think about Will Dennison when he talks to me about this. Like, a starting quarterback is worth the first. Mac Jones is worth the first. Russell Wilson is worth more of a first, an earlier first. But I mean, just this is what it is, right? Daniel Jones worth the first.
Yeah.
Jimmy Garoppolo probably should be getting the first for him. 112, 110, 111. It is what it is. Yeah, Russell Wilson's definitely worth the 24 mid first, in my opinion.
Yep.
That's what I would expect to pay.
Absolutely. I would expect to pay more personally. Yeah. But I traded Jimmy G for Devi 111, and they're all worth that. They just are. That's what they're worth. And I think we need to normalize, like we were talking about last week with who do we have on? Kevin Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
We need to normalize Devi firsts being valued more like just a first, because I do think that I think that's their worth. And you talk to Katie Flower, she's come on our show many a times and said almost every round should be considered a first round pick, right? So we definitely need to normalize just all those just being considered first round picks. But yeah, I think the Ballers missed the mark on this one a little bit. Russell Wilson absolutely worth a first, and I would not feel any type of way about giving up a first for that. So yep, just wanted to get my take out there after hearing
small confession. I've never consumed Footballers content.
Really? Wow.
They're so huge. You would think I have, but I haven't.
What's funny is I started listening to them they were already big enough, but I started listening to them probably like 6 years ago or so. And I mean, them and it was probably CBS. I'm trying to think. It's probably them and CBS where I started hearing like Dynasty, like just them talk about their Dynasty leagues. And I was like, Dynasty? Like, what do you mean Dynasty? And then I started I was like, oh, that's kind of like, it kicked me off where I was like, wow, this is exactly what I've been looking for my entire life. But, they do great work, dude. Like they really do. They, again, like, I don't think they're too mainstream. Like they're not like Matthew Berry where they like have just like, they're just totally like a personality at this point. They definitely haven't hit that level in my opinion, but, I just think that they aren't dynasty focused. So they miss the mark sometimes because they haven't, like, they're in their own league markets, and their league markets are not what the dynasty community has been evaluating players like they just have they've been doing this for 15 years. Their values are totally different in those specific leagues. So I don't think they're in like the the larger market that we kind of have exposed ourselves to with all the leagues we're in overseas and the community on Twitter and the whole 9 yards. So, but I love what they do. Honestly, their Dynasty show now that they do is with only one of them a week, and it has their like stats dude and their injury guy, Matthew Betts, and I forgot what the other guy's name is right now, but it's a little different flavor, and they do a pretty good job in there. So yeah, shout out to them. Respect, mad respect.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so this one was sent to me in a Dynasty Underdog League. Devon, I forgot, I don't know how you say his name, Devon, A-Chain, and Tank Bigsby for Treylon Burks. I will say it did not get done, but it was sent to me nonetheless, so I figured I'd get your thoughts on this.
Sure, I'll just take the 2 running backs. I love.
Really?
Yeah, I guess so.
Whoa.
I love Burks,
wow, I'm surprised.
But yeah, I think I'll take the 2 running backs.
Okay, I'm a little surprised. Like I just think that these are 2 big question marks. Like A-Chain, obviously he's getting some hype, and Bigsby is the backup for Etienne. I mean, one of the like essentially A-Chain would need to really hit, right?
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
Yeah, I just
and
think,
I think
like,
in my head I was thinking Gibbs too in my head, not Bigsby, but yeah. Man, I love Burks. I just have a lot of questions about that offense, and I see potential for both those running backs potentially being, high-end RB2 type deals going forward, and then even more after that possibly. So, yeah, at first glance, I'd probably just take the running backs. But
I mean, those are rightful concerns.
See, that's the thing is like, but this is not a trade I would make. If I had Burks, I'm not gonna give them away for A-Chain and I don't want them that bad. And if I had A-Chain and Bigsby, I probably want to keep them instead of trying to go for a wide receiver. So it's not even a trade I'd make, to be honest with you. So.
Okay, I feel you there, and I do get it. Like the running backs, they could have more value long term, I guess. But I guess I like A-Chain a lot. I don't like him that much. I guess I'm just a really big fan of Burks, and I think that he's going to have a solid season. I think he could have a breakout season here, to be honest with you, despite quarterback concerns. I mean, if Ryan Tannehill is healthy all year, that's a good thing for Treylon Burks.
Yes.
Okay. I got this deal done a week or 2 ago. I got Darnell Mooney and Noah Fant amongst a couple other like throw-ins to jump up in a draft or something. I forgot exactly what it was, but Darnell Mooney and Noah Fant for a 24-second essentially.
Smash.
Let's just say that. I then sent Mooney away for a 24-second thereafter.
So you got a free Noah Fant?
Yeah.
Good job.
I felt
awesome.
like almost no matter what you think of Mooney in the second, like I won the entirety of what happened there.
Oh yeah.
So
you absolutely did. Yeah. No,
yeah.
I love those trades. I love making those trades more than anything. It's like where you go and you grab a little extra, but then you're able to flip that extra for like the little piece you threw in earlier. Yep, and you like walk away with like a free something. Like I don't know. I love that. Good job.
No, yeah, this one absolutely made me feel like it was one of the better feelings I've had in a trade in some time, just because you're like, yeah, like I absolutely there's no doubt that I won something out of this deal. Like I got something here.
I like that a lot.
I will say, like, I don't know if I know who the manager was, and he's a good Dynasty player, but I don't know if the manager went and looked what or remembered or cared about what I traded for Mooney. What I took to acquire him, I do that. At least I know what the market is for almost every player in my league that's been traded. I'm just a nut job, and I have it in the back of my head because I'll remember what it was traded for in that league for some reason. Like, it's just how I am. I probably should notate all this stuff down, but one way or another, like I know that, X player was traded for a second. Like, I'm not going to go trade a first for that player. Like his market value in our league is a second. And if you're going to go and hold me to the fire and be like, no, like that was a bad trade, I'm not trading for that, then I'll tell you, okay, great, I'll go find something else to do. But like, I'm not going to get, raked over the coals because my league mate's a bad league mate, and they're not a bad league mate, but my league mate doesn't really value players the way I value them. And I think missed the mark, So, for me, yeah, that one was just, that was a good
good trade.
feel good, and also just like when you're going to make trades, look at the acquisition cost of those players in your league. See if they've been traded, because then you can literally get what their value is in that league, and that's your starting point. And you can work either right under it or right above it, however you feel. If you really want to go get that player, go ahead and pay for him. Or if you want to get a value, you can go ahead and try to get a value, and you know what he's worth in that league, and you can kind of gauge. So I think it's a really smart move that a lot of players probably don't utilize.
Good job.
Okay, so last one, we're going to finish off here with the Dynasty Underdog Listener League 2 trade. This is an interesting one. I like this one. Dalvin Cook for a 24-second and a 25-second. And I forgot who the other manager was on this deal, but I know that a friend of the show, one of my best friends, Jake Hornblum in our league, he made this deal. I think he traded the seconds away for Dalvin Cook. So shout out.
Yeah, I believe I commented on this before, but like that's like the going rate, right? You're getting a really, really good running back who's going to end up on a team sometime. He's still got. It wasn't that he was washed as why he kind of got cut or anything, or his production for his value. It's just it was a contractual thing, and he's, fairly healthy. I mean, he has terrible shoulders; they seem to pop out all the time. But to get a player like that for 2 seconds, especially if you're contending at any type of level whatsoever, I mean, 2 late seconds, even for like 2 mid seconds, like I feel like that's pretty good deal for Dalvin. Now you just hope he lands in a really good spot.
If he signed in Miami tomorrow, you'd have to pay a first for him.
Absolutely, 100%.
Or more than the 2 seconds. I don't know how you want to slice it, but you're not getting him for the 2 seconds.
Yeah, second in a player. Yeah, not getting him that cheap. So I think it's a smash. It shows a little bit of not intuition. It's a little bit of hindsight. Like you're looking ahead at
or foresight.
Foresight. Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Foresight. It takes foresight.
Okay.
Just knowing that Dalvin Cook is going to be more valuable than those 2 picks at some future point in time. You're going to have a hopefully a good, healthy, high-end RB2, low-end RB1 type player in Dalvin Cook for way less than you've been able to get him, and way less than you're going to be able to get him, especially if he lands in Miami. So I like this trade a lot.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be cheap for a running back, a high-end running back too, which is essentially what he'll be if he lands in a pretty good spot. And I know Jake's team, and I think I beat him in the playoffs to get to the finals potentially. He has a really, really good team.
To lose to me.
Productive. Yes, correct. Yes, unfortunately. He has a very, very good team, very productive team. So I think that he's hoping this will be kind of like that extra oomph for his team, and giving up 2 seconds in the future. Like it's not a high cost for that. So I did want to say that a lot, like this was from one of our listener leagues, which if you're in the Discord, the Dynasty Underdog Discord, you'll get first dibs to our next one, which we'll do next year. But all these trades, questions, all that stuff, like a lot of the stuff comes from there. So definitely join the Discord, get in there, and just chat with us. That's all.
Yeah, chat with us. All right, cool. Anything else you got?
Nah, man, that's it. That's all I got.
Cool. All right, everybody. Thanks for giving us a listen this week to Dynasty Underdog. Follow us on Twitter at Dynasty Underdog, at Uriah Dawkins, and at WillieBeam DFF. Please join our Discord. Check us out on YouTube. Check us out on Spotify. Wherever you get your podcasts. Just found out that Stitcher's no longer going to be around in a couple months, so can't listen to us there anymore. Other than that, y'all have a good night.
Get on Spotify. That's right. Move all of the Stitcher listeners to Spotify. Get over there. All right, fam. Peace out. Later.
Have a good one.